this is Steve Hill, the Black Satanist, and I took a left to the valley.
Close enough.
Good enough. I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith in unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Coming at you from Burning BC and Alligator, Florida, this is Left of the Valley 2.0. My name is Kevin, and if a priest could turn wine into blood, that would be very useful for hospitals.
Yeah, that's true.
Joining me as usual is a team embarrassed for sacrificing the wrong person to Satan yet again. She wonders why Iron Man and not F.E. male. Sabrina.
Hi. That's pretty good.
And he wanted to cook alligator but only had a crock pot. Brad Lee.
That's right.
Guys, welcome back. And we have a surprise guest host, friend of the show, Thomas Bear. Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Doing all right. How are y'all today?
Oh, fantastic. Let's give you the large applause here. I think you deserve it.
Thanks for having me on.
There we go.
There we go. Large applause. Spare no expenses. Spare no expense. So today we are going to be talking to Roy Dahl of the Native Press. That will be in the second half of the show. But first, let's go ahead with our usual chit-chat. Guys, a lot of things have been going on with Afghanistan. You guys have any thoughts on what's going on in Afghanistan?
It's bad.
Sad.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Taliban has swept in. There was these incredible pictures of a U.S. cargo plane taken off with refugees and people clinging on to the damn thing as it was trying to leave at the airport, and 7 people actually ended up dying. Either falling off the plane as they were holding on to the wings trying to get out of the country. The good news is some pockets of anti-Talibans are fighting back.
Good.
The Taliban wasted no time, even though they said in the press that they're going to make sure to treat women more respectfully this time. What happened? I don't know. But they actually they were caught covering pictures of women, like advertising on walls, stuff like that. They just tore them down right off the bat. Yeah, of course. Yeah. The Taliban also seized a lot of weapons that were U.S. made that were made for the Afghan army that was there at the time. It seems like the Afghan army just decided, yeah, we're not going to fight this. We're just going to put the weapons down, walk away. And it seems the Taliban has control of the country yet again. There was little resistance. Some local residents, this is interesting. Some local residents told the Taliban they can govern the country as long as they don't enter their home or their village. So the Taliban, after that, they did a house-to-house search, and they were actually driven out of these villages by these villagers. So I think it was very interesting to see the village mentality at some of these, for lack of a better word, tribal people, basically saying, we don't care who's running the country as long as you don't come into our village. So it's like, stay out of our village. So I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting thing that's going to go out there.
Sad.
Yeah. So seems that we wasted a lot of manpower, a lot of lives, and a lot of money to go into Afghanistan. It's a really interesting lesson in history because it seems to be, to me anyway, that the U.S. did not learn from when they went in there the first time against the Russians. Now, if you don't know much about this, during the 80s, the Russians have invaded Afghanistan. The U.S. came in because, you want to fight the communists.
Yep.
So what they did is they basically armed the Mujahideen, I believe it was, and trained them. And when the Mujahideen managed to drive out the USSR, the U.S. basically made the mistake of saying, well, it's done. Because they kind of ask to rebuild the country because you've been in a war. And the U.S. says, we don't care. Whatever. We drove the USSR. That's all we cared about. And it seems they kind of just repeated that same mistake.
Well, and they also trained Osama bin Laden in that time.
That was the thing. Yeah. That, the Frankenstein monster that came back to bite them in 2001.
Yeah. So who are they training this time?
There's going to be a part 3 to this at some point down the road in history. And it's a shame. If you, for example, if you don't know much about this and you really don't want to read into history, there's a very simple movie that was featuring Tom Hanks called Charlie Rose's War. where he plays Senator Charlie Rose, who was one of the senators that was actually trying to get the help for these people. And it's really telling that, he's getting all these this money from Congress to help him get weapons. And as soon as basically the USSR is driven out, Congress basically says, we don't care. We don't care what happens to these people. Our objective was to get out the communist element.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, too, which would be of interest for you guys because we're all atheists here, one of the main points that we're doing in Afghanistan at the time was taking care of radio stations and the media to make sure that radicalized the Islam to fight against the godless atheist of Russia. So this is where it all started. This is where it all kind of started back in the 80s during the Russian invasion. And now this is the monster they can't control anymore. Yeah, so it's really, really sad. But anyway, it's a fascinating look into history. If you're a bit of a student of history, I really highly recommend you take a look at it. Moving on. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, said that
I thought you meant, the flood.
No,
okay.
not the flood. Not the flood.
The dude. Yeah, that's
just checking.
Said that July 2021 stands at the hottest month ever recorded since 1880.
But you know what?
What?
Climate change isn't real.
That's right. Thank goodness. Right?
There's
That's
snowballs,
sarcasm, people. Sorry.
So apparently the average of the year was 0.93 degrees Celsius hotter than usual, or 1.67 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than usual, above the 20th century average. And this is also actually the 45th July in succession. So each year, 45 years, all right, to exceed the 20th century average. So if you really don't think that climate change is real, we've had 45 Julys in a row hotter than usual.
Yeah.
Wow. The 10 warmest years have occurred since 2005, 7 of the 10 since 2014.
And what we also have to recognize is they're taking the world temperature into account. So it isn't just the fact that we're in the northern hemisphere and it's summer. It's also the weather in the southern hemisphere where it's winter. So they're taking both into account.
Yes, exactly.
And obviously that means it's warmer where it's supposed to be cold right now.
Except where we had a blizzard or a snowstorm in February.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So climate change is a thing. It is real. Just recorded the highest temperature. There's this Arctic station like way up there, and they just recorded like 18 degrees Celsius, which is like summer temperature, and it's never been done. It never, ever. This is a place that's usually covered in snow most of the year, if not all year long. So. Yeah, this is getting dangerous, and it's going to take more than just changing plastic straws to fight this.
What's 8 degrees in Fahrenheit for the Americans? That's probably around 65.
Yeah, I would think so.
65, 70, something like that.
Somebody look it up.
In the Arctic.
Oh, well.
Wow. That's crazy. I mean, that's comfortable. That's comfortable weather right there.
Yeah. That's
65,
nice
70.
spring weather for us.
18 degrees in Fahrenheit. Celsius. Yeah, 64 Fahrenheit.
64.
So
Okay.
Yeah. In the Arctic.
Yeah. We're
in the Arctic.
Where the polar bears are.
Where the polar bears are. The polar bears are, oh my God, I got to take a layer off.
Yeah.
That's like light weather right there.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So but climate change isn't real.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing it's a Chinese.
And sarcasm.
We might be in trouble here at some point.
Yes.
I never understood the whole hoax thing. Like for what? Like like for Big Planet? Like who's
big environment, big green.
I've been talking about this since I was in elementary school, and that was not yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
There is a I was watching a stat, and I don't quite have the number right here, but it says if you are, I think it's like 35 years old or younger, you've never actually seen a real Canadian winter here in Canada. So this is how long it's been going on. And
what do you mean by a real Canadian winter in Canada?
Were the
across all of Canada? Because
where you usually
no true Scotsman fallacy.
Yeah, typical temperature and all that.
Like I completely agree with you that when I was a child, we had snow days nearly every year in Western Canada, where it really doesn't snow a lot on the lower mainland.
You and I are older, so we remember some of these winters.
Yeah, but you know what? I have a daughter who will be 20 tomorrow, and she never once had a snow day. Never once.
Yeah.
Never needed to. We never got that usual 10, 20 centimeters of snow, which is like a foot or two.
Where I come from in Quebec, we usually had our first snow like somewhere early October.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I talk to my friends and my family in Quebec, they don't get a first snow till like December.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So yeah, this is this is a problem. Anyway,
yeah. We could go on and on.
In other news, did you guys hear that Jeff Bezos, the Amazon guy, is suing NASA?
Why?
Yeah,
he had to go to space. It wasn't good enough.
Well, he says that NASA is he didn't go to space with NASA. He went by himself essentially. Right?
Awesome.
He said that NASA is unfairly awarded the lunar lander contract because NASA said that they wanted to go back to the moon, and they're privatizing some of the aspects of the mission, right? And they're awarded the lunar lander contract to SpaceX, which is Elon Musk. Right?
Oh.
That was back in April as part of the Artemis mission, which is the one that's going back to the moon. SpaceX made a bid of $2.89 billion and were awarded a contract. Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos, their bid was $5.99 billion.
And so he's suing them. Why? Because they went with the cheaper option?
Well, he claimed that NASA allowed SpaceX to revise its bid. So I don't know if that was the original bid of $2.89 billion. I'm assuming it wasn't, and they managed to revise their bid. And then Blue Origin was also offered to waive $2 billion in fees. $2 billion.
Yeah, exactly. He was just trying to get rich off this.
How much actual maintenance or actually construction is there when you get $2 billion in fees?
And this processing fee is $500 million. So
that's right.
These add up quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's just the bid. So when the final bill comes in,
exactly,
with all those project extras and things outside the scope. And
Blue Origin offered to waive $2 billion in fees to NASA should they choose to amend the contract to include Blue Origins as well as SpaceX into the Artemis project.
Oh, bite me.
So I don't know.
What is this rich man fighting? Like, God, fuck off. Why don't you end
You're
it?
the richest man on earth. Can you just stick to selling stuff on Amazon? Do you really?
Can't we all just get along? Why can't you guys just all work together?
And instead
of
that, putting that $5 billion into space, how's about we use that $5 billion to feed the people that are here and give them fresh water?
I don't.
That would involve helping people.
I understand a lot of people make that argument, but I don't like that argument.
I know you don't.
Because it's the same argument they were making for NASA for going to the moon. No. And, so
I'm not saying don't go there, but these people are suing each other for how much money. Why not use that money instead and feed the goddamn people and funnel your crap to go into space? Like, do both.
Well, yeah, okay, that's fair.
You have the money.
No, yeah, I totally agree. But I really don't think we should look at stopping their mission to go back to the moon.
Never said to stop. I just said stop fighting about it.
No, I agree, and that's fair because some of the
money on litigation.
Some people might think this is just a vanity project or something like that, but these kind of missions into space do generate dividends down the road in new technologies.
Maybe.
If
that's what they're looking. Well, I know they do, but is that what they're looking to do, or are they looking to colonize a new area?
No, that's what NASA. I mean, this is how we got the GPS system around the world. That's satellite technology. It's by funding these kind of missions. And at the time when they were funding these missions, people were using the same argument. Why are you sending these rockets into space and not feeding poor people? I understand that. And I'm not saying we shouldn't feed poor people. I'm just saying that we should also explore the limits of...
And stop fighting with each other about exploring those limits. That's kind of the
I
reality.
have a different take on that. I realize that some, like Kevin was saying, true, we've got GPS now and all that. But as far as exploring space and going further out in space and the possibility, of colonizing other planets, I don't think we should. I think humans need to die off before we go out into space and screw up, other planets like we screwed up our own.
Yep. I don't disagree with you.
That's exactly what happened with this privatization of space. Every single thing they find and discover out there, they're going to monetize it for purpose of capitalism. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I
but I also think that capitalism is not going to be the economic system we'll have forever. I think that we're reaching the pinnacle of what capitalism is all. I know, and it's interesting that for most of us, we can actually picture the end of the world in an easier, clearer image that we could picture the end of capitalism.
I have a question. When you went to McDonald's yesterday, were you paying attention to the prices of the food that you were buying? I'm very curious. I have where I'm going. So I'm going somewhere with this.
Somewhat.
Do you remember how much the Big Mac was? The combo, approximately.
No.
Like maybe $9-10.
Yeah, something like that, I guess.
Okay, how much do you pay, Brent? Do you know?
About 14
for a combo.
Like wait, right? And they, like, I think it's more than
for a Big
Mac. No,
you're
right. You're right. No, it's less than $10. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I don't go there too often.
How much is in Texas?
Yeah, and how much are you paying in Texas? Do you know?
Not sure because I don't go to McDonald's.
Yeah, I don't. It's a rare thing for us as well. So the reason I'm asking this is because what's minimum wage where you guys are?
It's still 7.25.
Yeah.
About that. So just so you know,
they said that they were raising it in Florida. The bill passed to make it a $15, but it wasn't all at once. It was like over time or something.
The argument is always we did that here, but the argument is always that the cost of everything's going to go up exponentially and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Still paying less than $10 for that Big Mac combo. Our minimum wage in BC is $15.20.
Yeah, but that's America. That's like 3 pesos for that.
Granted, the conversion's about the same since they're paying the same in American dollars. They're ultimately paying more for their Big Mac in the States than we are in Canada since we're paying the same price. When you think about it,
we'd have to check the actual numbers because we're just going by hearsay here. But
that and these, McDonald's might not be the best example because it's a franchise. It's a franchise.
No, actually, I googled it. It's apparently quite different in the United States. The cost of a Big Mac actually does vary based on what the minimum wage is. It's up to like $6 in Seattle, and it's only like say $3 down in Texas. But this was an old stat, and I don't know how accurate that is. But yeah, I will tell you, coming from a franchise background, that we absolutely had different pricing in different areas based on different economic factors.
No, but I understand the boogeyman of everything's going to go up in prices for raised minimum wage is bullshit.
It's not true.
It's absolute bullshit.
It's just. I mean, it does, of course. Ultimately, but that's more inflation than it is.
I think the price of a Big Mac in Norway, where their minimum wage is like $20 an hour, is like a quarter more than it is for.
Anyways,
what it would do is it gives the CEOs and stuff. It gives them an excuse.
Yeah.
And then they start raising money as if they are losing money when in reality they're just not getting as much of a bump as they'd like from the last quarter.
Yeah.
Right. They're making more money, but they're not making as much more money as they'd like to, so they can blame it on minimum wage and then hike up prices even more. Yeah. It's all smoke and mirrors.
I've been in a couple of arguments with people that they were in the mindset, well, why does some average Joe flipping burgers at McDonald's deserve $15 an hour? Oh, wait a minute. Okay, does he not deserve to be able to afford his rent and his electricity? Does he not deserve a living wage?
Exactly.
And when do we stop? Like, when does this stop? Like, let's say, what do they deserve? Okay, $6 an hour, $5 an hour, $4 an hour. Like, when are we getting to sweatshop numbers here?
Exactly.
Who's drawing the lines and where? You know what I mean, and why? You know what I mean. So
this is why it bothers me so much to see that there are a lot of anti-union movements, especially in the States and here in Canada as well. Because you don't realize that if it wasn't for people that getting together and collectively bargaining, we would still be making a quarter a day for 16-hour days. Because that's what it was before.
Yeah,
it's still being fucking feudalism, man.
Absolutely.
Capitalism running rampant is not a great thing.
It's not.
It needs, for lack of a better term, socialism and oversight to keep it keep it down a bit. Otherwise, you just get into this nightmare night.
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
that was a good segue.
Economy 101 for everybody out there.
Speaking of economic thing, let's go for a top 10.
Right.
I'm doing the top 10.
Yes, because I'm actually going to step out now. So enjoy the rest of the show, you guys. Sorry I have to leave. I may pop in. I have a tattoo, so I may pop in while I'm in the chair.
Can't believe you're quitting the show in the middle of the show.
Fun.
Oh, but if you saw the tattoo, you'd understand, people.
Oh.
Maybe I'll make it.
It's worth it. Okay.
It's totally worth it. Anyway, have a good one, guys. Bye.
Take it easy.
All right. Well, moving on. We're doing the top 10 about expensive things. So, hey, Big Spender, a lot of this is going to be a list of the top 10's most expensive things by weight. Now, this is not talking about a fancy car or a fancy plane or anything like that. This is a small amount of something that costs a lot of money. So, per weight.
Okay.
So, this is going to be interesting. So, number 10, we've had horseshoe crab blood.
What?
Yeah, you know the horseshoe crab?
Yeah, those little weird looking alien things.
They kind of look like they step out of time and out of the dinosaurs. It's not actually.
Yeah,
they actually have no claws. But in some part of the world, they actually do eat the eggs as well. The crab blood is actually quite valuable. It's actually blue in color. It has remarkable medical properties. It's actually even used in the studies to fight COVID-19.
Wow.
So this blood actually goes for about $60,000 a gallon. The blood contains a compound that can detect if the bacteria has infected a vaccine product. So, interesting stuff.
Huh, that's fascinating, yeah.
Coming in at number 9, have you guys ever heard of agar wood?
No.
Agar wood comes from the Aquilaria. Am I going to massacre this? Aquilaria trees. And it's a tree.
Hold on. Are you reading stuff from Game of Thrones? Because, like,
no,
weird.
No.
Like... It sounds like a Game of Thrones tree.
When this tree is infected with specific mold, it forms a resin, kind of like a reaction to the body. A bit like we regenerate white blood cells, but the tree forms a resin. And the resin is dark and aromatic, and it soaks into the wood. So the wood is used, especially in India, and it's used for perfumes, incense, and it can only be carved by hand. If you want some of that wood, it goes for $100,000 per kilo, or 2.2 pounds for you guys in the States. $100,000 for 2 pounds of it.
Holy shit.
Number 8. Have you guys ever heard of tritium?
Tritium.
Yes, this will.
Now we moved on to Star Trek. All right, now I see what we're doing here.
Back about $30,000 per gram. So a kilogram is 1,000 grams, right? So a kilogram is 2 pounds. So think of a 1,000th of that. I'll set you back $30,000.
Wow.
It's
just to give a visual, like what it wouldn't be like a gram of Coke is basically a sugar packet. That's a gram of like what you know what I mean?
I'll take your word for it. This is a radioactive isotope that's often used in the glowing watches. You know the watch when the numbers kind of glow. That's what. It's used. It can be produced naturally, but it's very rare. Or what they do is to artificially produce it. They irradiate lithium. It's also used in medicine and even as nuclear fuel.
Whoa.
Number 7. Have you guys ever heard of Zolgensma? This is a medicine. It's a drug. It's gene therapy as well. And it's used to treat spinal muscular dystrophy in children. Only one dose is needed. They inject one dose into a child, which is measured by the body weight of a child. So they inject amount X per body weight. But it goes for $2.1 million per dose.
Wow. Holy
wow.
Shit.
And we're only at number 7. Number 6. You guys ever heard of saffron, which is a spice, right? It's a spice. It's made from the stigma of the crocus plant. It's the most expensive spice in the world. 1 kilo or 2 pounds, if you wish, goes for $11,000. The harvesting is only happens in a few weeks of the year, but you need like 150 flowers to get 1 gram. So if you were to get 1 pound of the saffron, you would have to harvest a football field of flowers to get that 1 pound.
Holy shit! It's not a lot of return there. It's
not a lot of return, buddy.
Jesus.
Coming in number 5, we have, of course, diamonds, right? Diamonds. They're sold by carats, which is about.
I have heard of diamonds.
Yes. 1 gram equals about 5 carats for a diamond. 1 gram diamond, they go anywhere from $36,000 to $360,000. Of course, that depends on the clarity and the rarity of the diamond. But we knew that already.
Right.
Number 4, Death Stalker venom. Ooh,
what?
That's good. Yes.
Star Wars.
Death Stalker is a scorpion, right? It's a scorpion in Africa and Middle East. It measures about 3 inches long. or about the size of my penis.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. That's how you
give me the visual, because I'm so used to seeing it that it's good.
The venom has been useful in treating tumors and even diabetes. The problem is it's very hard to extract. Right? How do you extract venom from a scorpion? You have to do it like pinch a little bit and try not to get stung. One drop will cost $130.
Damn.
So if you want to get 1 gallon, that'll cost you $39 million.
Whoa. Holy shit.
Wow.
It makes it the most expensive liquid in the world.
Wow.
So to get 1 jug and 1 gallon of scorpion venom, yeah.
Right.
Bag, my friend.
And what do they do with it?
They use it for medicine.
Medicine?
They use it for treating especially tumors in the brain, apparently. It's very efficient for tumors on the brain. So I guess I would assume here, I don't know, I'd have to dig deeper into it, but I would assume they would inject the venom into the tumor and it basically kind of destroys it.
Oh, and the tumor doesn't like it. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Nobody likes to be injected with that.
Tumor's having a bad day at that time. He's like, fuck it, I'm out of here. And he gets up and walks away.
Number 3. Have you guys ever heard of painite? Painite is the rarest gemstone. It's even more rare than diamonds. It's deep red, like a ruby, and it's tough like diamonds. By 2004, only 2 had ever been cut into jewelry.
Wow.
Only 3 crystals are known to exist as of 2001.
Holy shit.
Because it is so rare, it goes for $60,000 per carat, or 1 gram of that painite will cost you $300,000.
My God. Wow. That's
Number
incredible.
2. You have californium.
What?
Californium is the element 98 on the elements table. It was actually created in Berkeley at Berkeley University in 1950. It is a neutron emitter, so it can pretty much penetrate anything. And it's used, of course, in medicine and to start nuclear reactors.
Wow.
It's an element that we've created ourselves. 1 gram of californium will cost you $27 million.
Whoa. Shit.
Any guess as to the number 1 position? Take a guess.
Gold. No. Platinum?
Yeah.
No.
We're not even close to that. Gold's not even in the top 10.
Clean water.
Antimatter.
Oh, antimatter.
This sounds like something out of science fiction, but it's true. The problem, of course, with antimatter is containing it. Because as soon as you can't put it in a box of any kind, because matter and antimatter cancels each other, right? You have some kind of energy exchange and explosion. So you can contain it using magnetic fields. On an atomic level, it works opposite normal matter. It has a reverse charge. So instead of like positive protons and negative electrons, it has negative antiprotons and positive positrons.
What?
So, yeah.
And then the double negatives all over here.
We don't know.
Anti-negative proton.
When the universe was created, we assumed there was an equal amount of matter and antimatter. We don't know why that matter seems to have won this battle and antimatter hasn't. But there is still some antimatter out there. If you're going to create some antimatter, right now they managed to create some anti-hydrogen antimatter. This will cost you per gram. Now remember, 1 kilogram is 1,000 grams, and 1 kilogram is 2 pounds, okay?
Right.
So if you're going to take 1 gram of the anti-hydrogen, it will cost you $62.5 trillion.
Whoa, holy
trillion.
More than the Afghanistan war cost.
To give you an idea, all the physical money in the world, all the money you can touch in the world amounts to $37 trillion. So it's more than all the physical money in the world for 1 gram of antimatter.
Jeez. We're going to have to
That's
get
a lot to wrap your head around.
So what James Bond villain has it? Like, that's what I want to know.
Exactly. That's exactly. It's like something a Dr. No would have or something like that.
Exactly.
Oh man. So whew, it's a lot to take on.
That's fascinating. Holy shit. I didn't even know that we could find, like, I thought that it was like practically undetectable, but I guess you have different types of it. So as you said, it was hydrogen, correct?
Well, I mean, I guess every element, well, I would assume, would have an anti-element.
Wow.
Well, right now, I guess we've only hydrogen being the first element. I guess it's the easiest one to do.
Sure.
Have an anti-element of. So it's the stuff for science fiction, man. But it's
real. And it's like it was one of those things where they said they can't really see it or whatever, but they can see how it affects other molecules or something like that.
That's a good
that's
question.
The only way
they
can
dark
tell.
matter.
Those are two different things.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought antimatter was dark matter. Maybe I'm incorrect on that.
It's beyond my pay grade anyway.
Okay, my bad. I always thought those were synonymous. My bad.
All right.
Oh man. Okay, perfect. My dear Brent, you have a
I do. And my bad. Did Ben send you a clip? Because he might have just sent it to me. And
he sent it to you because I don't have it.
Shit. Okay. No, that's all right. That's all right. No big deal. So here's what happened. This is from the Friendly Atheist blog, of course, and here's the headline: it's an off-duty pilot used the PA system to tell his captive audience of the flight about Jesus, and not only about Jesus, he gets into some really uncomfortable territory. So
you look to your left on the left wing, we have Jesus walking there.
Oh man, I would have been fucking livid if I had to just sit there and listen to a fucking sermon over a goddamn PA while I'm stuck.
Right.
But what kind of sermon would it be? Would it be like, "Oh, ladies and gentlemen, this is your Captain." That was playing in the sky.
Yeah, because they always sound so. Buddy, no, I just want to tell you about Jesus. No, Jesus is the Lord of everything, and I just want to let it sounded very weird.
They just can't help themselves, right? They just can't help themselves. They really just gotta push their Jesus onto everything.
Yeah, they're just like, oh man, we're gonna be here for another 20 minutes. All the people are strapped down in their seats and can't move anywhere. Like, I got an idea. Let me push my religion on all of them. This would be great.
Let's make the flight really, really uncomfortable. Bad enough that you're in economy class and you got your knees up to your chin and you're trying to squeeze between the seat and nothing. Jesus on top of that. It's a great star review on this.
Yeah. You know what these people need? They need to up the discomfort here. I mean, really.
Yeah, that's right.
Crank it up a notch. Yeah. But on June 15th, so this is a while ago, but we got all the details of it more recently. An off-duty American Airlines pilot grabbed a hold of the public address system just after the plane landed in Chicago from Washington, D.C. As the passengers waited to get off the flight, the pilot began telling everyone about Jesus, sex addiction,
wait a minute, is he talking about Jesus' sex addiction or Jesus, sex addiction?
No, it's just different categories.
I want to
get covered.
I want to hear about Jesus' sex addiction. Jesus hit the green bang 12 guys in the rowboat on the sea. Yeah, man. Oh, sorry, I gotta do it like the pilot. Jesus used to gangbang on the Sea of Galilee with the Peter.
It's like, well, I mean, it's not fair. I mean, look at the holes in my hands. I mean, it's perfect, really. I mean, makes it much more interesting. I can't help it now. But no, and the last one's the crazy. So they went on to tell everybody about Jesus, sex addiction, and his marriage to a woman, despite being gay.
Okay.
Gay or the pilot is gay?
The pilot is gay and is married, but talking about basically how it's a choice and
he likes to convert on top of that.
Right. Yeah. Basically. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's not like he just was like, hey, y'all, if you feel bad about things you did in your life, just Jesus will forgive you. It wasn't like that. He goes on to fucking sex addiction and, the fact that he's gay and he managed to pray away that enough to get married, I guess. I don't. Jesus. But so here's this.
There's so many things wrong with that.
Right. Here it is, and I quote. This is what he said. I screamed to God every night that he would take away my sins and thoughts resulting homosexual tendencies. He said, my life kept spiraling out of control. It's basically one of those testimony stories. You know, my life kept spiraling out of control. I became a sex addict, not a thing.
Yeah,
and turned to pornography. The pilot said that he had married a woman 5 years ago, but could not tell her about my pain and struggle with homosexuality. Even though I was in love with her, just over 1 year into the marriage, I began to give into the pressure of being gay. The pressure of being
Well, maybe he's just bi. You know, ever thought of that, buddy? You know,
or maybe just. Well, I mean, he already brought. So here's the thing: he already brought up the sex addiction thing, right? Mm-hmm. And generally, that's not a thing. Like porn addictions and stuff. But people think it's a thing if they feel this like real like heavy guilt, and usually that's put on them by other members of their community, right? And so they end up, and then they put it on themselves. So they're like, well, this is something I need to stop. I can't stop it because like it's fucking masturbation. Like that's a normal thing, you know. And but they think that they're doing something wrong, and so they think it's an addiction. It kind of feels that way to them.
For the audience out there, next time some guy or gal comes at you and talks about sex addiction and say, yeah, I was a sex addict, just ask him one question. Who diagnosed you?
Right.
Because you'll find out real quick that they never had a diagnosis. Because, first of all, it's not a thing. It's not a thing.
They were diagnosed by their preacher.
That's right. They've been diagnosed by their preacher or their parents or something like that.
Right. Yeah. But all of this is, and you know, and he, but what a weird thing to put on to all the people in a plane. I mean, we're talking, there's kids and I mean, it's a plane full of people, you know, and you're going to put all of this, like the, you know, your testimony, which it seems to be like, this would have been, if it was my old church, this would have been a testimony that the pastor would have been like, okay. And before the testimony, all the kids, can we round up all the kids for Sunday school? Can we? Come on. All right. Now, okay, you see the guys coming down. Just send your kids out. They're going to get them to their classes. Okay, now time for the testimony. You know, like that. They would have done that at my church. You know what I mean?
Here's an interesting thought. Use that same story, but make that guy a Muslim. What would the outrage be? This guy is just on the microphone talking about Allah to capture U.S. audience. Just imagine the outcry there. Oh, man. The outcry about people saying, "Oh my God, they're trying to impose Sharia." Blah blah blah. Conservatives would just be losing their shit in mass, and it's the same thing. But because it's Christianity, it barely makes a blip.
Yeah, I mean, this is from months ago. You know, a couple of months ago, and like we're just now getting the details on it because everybody was just like, "Sure." Yeah, why wouldn't they do a message while I'm sitting and waiting?
Testimony, it'd be front page of the New York Times. It'd be front page of every newspaper out there.
Yeah, Fox News, like on nonstop coverage.
Nonstop coverage. We're on our 37, our coverage of Islamic terrorists finding the airplanes.
Right. Tucker would be chasing them down in the street.
Yeah.
Tell us some more about it.
I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I don't know what it is about Christians always having they try so hard. You know, it's like that crappy salesman that comes to your front door that wants to desperately sell you a set of Jinsu knives. I don't want your stupid Jinsu. I don't want your stupid Jesus. I don't care how much you tell me Jesus helps you or how these Jinsu knives are cutting tomatoes. I really don't give a fuck. Go away.
Yeah. And it's like they act like we've never heard this stuff before. Like I almost next time I swear I just want to completely like so I mean who so what? Jesus? Is that what you say? Jesus? What is that? He died? That's awful. I'm so sorry he died. Is he okay? He's not okay because he's dead. But I'm sorry about that. Whatever, you know, just act like you've never because they like to go over this like you've never fucking heard it before and like this the 200th time I've heard this story. Now it's gonna make me like want to come to your church.
I love to mess with them because I remember one time I went to a interfaith conference of some kind, right? And I went there as the atheist, and the guy walks to me and hey, how you doing? I'm John or something, and he's got this huge wooden cross on a necklace. And I mean, it's not like the normal tiny one usually. It's like it's fucking huge. It's almost the size of a plate, Like, and I looked at it and I said, "What's with the T?"
Tom or something.
Well, I thought, maybe it's Super Tom or Tim or something. And he just went on. That was like right there opening. So, oh well, let me tell you about Jesus.
Oh no, this is a Roman torture device. Here's why it's important.
Oh yeah.
Now,
Oh,
that's
man.
hilarious. It's
Oh,
like I always loved that bit that I can't remember the comedian that did it. Was just like, does anybody really think that's what Jesus would want to see when he comes back?
Jesus,
Bunch of his torture devices around everyone's neck.
I know the cross.
Give him PTSD.
Yeah, I couldn't remember who said that either.
I also love the ones where they say if Jesus had been like hung, there'd be a little noose around the electric chair. There'd be a little chair.
They wear a little electric chair around their neck.
It's
funny.
so freaking ridiculous. Oh man,
so weird. But
well,
yeah, it seemed to be quite inappropriate for an airplane.
Thank you so much for that, Brent. Let's take a quick pause. But before we do that, before we take a quick pause, because we're like ahead of schedule here, let's talk to Thomas a bit. Thomas,
yeah,
what's up, man?
Tell us about yourself, man.
Oh well, what do you want to know? Where do you want me to start?
Where you're from? What do you do?
The conception story, all the way to now.
Well, I grew up in a Methodist church all the way through high school, and but when I was a kid, I had doubts and questions, but that got dismissed by God works in mysterious ways, or who are we to question the Lord? BS answers like that.
Yeah.
But when I was a kid, that along with now go outside and play was enough to just to dismiss me from questioning much more, because playtime was far more important at that age.
Yeah, of course. Oh yeah.
But as I got after high school, I was in and out of church for the next several years, mostly in whenever I was going with a girlfriend and her family, or if it was a particular down point in my life and I thought maybe God was the answer. But eventually, the questions started coming back, and they only grew and got more questions, and they still got the same BS answers or no answers at all. So I started researching for myself. I started learning how the history of religions, how they were formed, how they were built upon religions that came before them, and so on. And eventually came to the realization that it was all BS. Let's see, then that was my early 20s, somewhere I guess around 22, 23 or so. From then up until 2016 or so, I was a closet atheist. I only knew one or two other atheists in person. Other than that, that was it. 2016, I joined social media, discovered atheist groups, and discovered, oh shit, there's a lot more people out there like me than I had any clue.
Isn't that a relief when you find that out?
Yes,
Right.
it was. Yes, big relief.
Thank goodness.
In 2017, I started. 2018, I started going to the Austin community, atheist community of Austin. I actually live only about 6 blocks away from there. Actually.
Wow,
that's awesome.
I went there for the first time. I got to meet Aaron Ra. He was there. And I was stuttering when I first met him. I was holding my hand out and shook his hand, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Aaron," and I'm like, couldn't talk. But let's see. Then in March of 2019, I was the co-organizer for the first Atheist Day ATX event. That was in association with the Atheist Day International, which was started by Armand Renaviv of Atheist Republic. So when I heard about it, I went and talked to the guys at ACA, the president there, and asked them if they knew anything about it, if they were fighting anything. They weren't, and they basically put the ball in my court, along with their guidance, of course, to see what I could come up with. And it was awesome. It's the first event of any kind, first of anything I've ever organized at all, and it was a huge success. It blew our expectations clean out of the water. Since 2018 is when I started doing my off-the-chain atheist clothing designs. I've got a couple of online shops One of them is Element X Designs, and my other one is Off the Chain Atheist, and that one is all atheist and secular designs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a business, just a hobby.
Including the T-shirt you're wearing now.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all. And I actually got
love it.
I actually got a shirt from there and say, I wish I didn't know I'd have put it on for today, but it said "fuck racism," which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Thank you again for that.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, no, thanks for providing it. It was great.
So.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome.
It nets me a little bit of spare change each month, so it keeps me busy.
All right.
Other than that, I don't know what to say.
That's all right. That's perfect.
If people want to visit your shop, and buy your stuff, where do they go?
Well, the easiest. Let's see. Well, find me on Facebook for one. That's probably the easiest way. Thomas Bear on Facebook, and from there you can find my pages. I've got a memes page. I've got a Facebook page for my apparel and merch. I've got a Off the Chain Atheist group that's got just over 4,000 members in it. The easiest way, I don't know if y'all have a way you can put up the link with the video, but the link I sent you earlier, that has all my links together.
Okay,
so,
perfect. No, yeah, and I'll share that out on my social media, and we'll put it on the Left of the Valley group that we have on Facebook, which everybody should join, of course.
Absolutely.
And the Unapologetics one as well. So we'll definitely put that out for you. Yeah,
thank you.
Good.
No, it's a good product. Aaron is a great guy.
Yeah,
it is.
Oh, he's fun.
And I'm still amazed to this day when I stop and think about the people that I know and am friends with now through the ACA and through having organized that event. Thomas Westbrook, he's a good friend of mine. He was one of the speakers for it. Drew McCoy, who's genetically modified skeptic.
Oh yeah.
Seth Andrews, all these people. Little old me is standing here next to these big names and like celebrity, so to almost, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, well, it's daunting, isn't it?
Yeah. So,
if your friend would genetically modify a skeptic, send him our way. We haven't interviewed him yet, so
okay.
Put them on the show. Yeah,
seriously, yeah.
I was always whenever I went to a conference, an atheist conference, I went to a couple of the Imaginal Religion that when we had it here in Canada. I was always taken aback by how human a lot of these big names happen. I can remember, for example, Matt Dillahunty. I walked in. Here's Matt Dillahunty, and there's lots of people around, and he's there by himself. I thought everybody's going to be rushing to see and talk to Matt. No, he's just hanging around doing nothing. People walking by him. Hey, how you doing? And I just like, holy shit, you're Matt Dillahunty, dude. It's like you think, but no, it's like super casual. Even if when they're big names, even with Seth Andrews, Aaron Raw, even Richard Dawkins. When I met Dawkins, was kind of the same thing, and people were very, very casual about it all.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and Aaron had some of the best stories I ever heard. I don't know if I ever told you that one, Brent. Aaron's telling me the story about he's years ago he was hitchhiking in Texas, right? And he was wearing this kind of like sweater, this kind of woolly sweater, and he's going to this little part of near a town that's pretty wooded, and he's starting to realize as he's walking, and the sun's starting to go down, he's being tracked by a pack of coyotes.
Oh, shit.
Aaron's a big guy. Aaron's a big guy, but he realizes, okay, I'm in trouble. So once around, he would just like turn around and kind of like roar to scare them or something like that. The sun's going down. These coyotes are getting a bit more and more bold. So he realizes, okay, I'm in trouble here. So he's trying to flag down cars. Now, if you've seen Aaron, you see what he looks like. Cars are swerving around him and bolting.
It's a crazy mountain, man. Get out of here.
That's a funny thing. Eventually he gets picked up and he goes to whatever destination he was coming. On his way back, going through that same town as he's being picked up by some guy, the guy tells him, without word of a lie, I'm going to do my best Texan accent, I guess. He says, you better watch out, boy. People have been reporting Bigfoot in these areas lately.
No, it wasn't even a mountain man. It was a Bigfoot.
The big guy in the woolly sweater. He just said people thought it was Bigfoot in the dusk and on the road there, trying to flag cars down. People thought they saw Bigfoot and were just bolted away.
Wow. That's so funny.
Amazing story. Okay, let's take a quick pause, and when we come back, we'll have a Roy Dahl of the Native Press. So stick with us, guys. Stick around.
It's where atheists gather. This is LATV 2.0.
All right, our next guest is Mr. Roy Dahl from the Free Native Press. He is the publisher. He's a snappy dresser and a snazzy dancer. Mr. Dahl, thank you so much for being with us on the show. Oh, boy. Let's give you a large applause at least. There we go. Spare no expense.
Okay. Ready.
Okay, so as we were saying, take two. Maybe you'd be so kind to give us a quick bio as to who Roy Dahl is.
Well, my name is Roy Dahl. I'm a Anishinaabe from the Red Lake, Ontario area of Canada. I was born and raised in Red Lake, but my band membership is Pikangikum First Nation, which is about 60 miles north of Red Lake. I am a 60 scoop survivor. I'm also a residential school survivor. I was educated at the University of Western Ontario, and I've been in the Northwest Territories for the last 31 years, predominantly as a journalist, although I have spent some time working in the mines and doing other in a few other jobs.
Wow, there's so much we can ask about your life and all that. On this show in the past few weeks and months, we've been putting a big spotlight on everything that's been going on with the residential school horrors in Canada, which I call Canada's shame. But before we get into all that, because like you said, you're a survivor of residential school yourself and the 60s scoop. Brent, you'll recall that we've talked about this before, the 60s scoop. Maybe you'd be so kind to give us a bit of an insight as to what you guys do at the Native Press, Free Native Press.
Well, Native Press, let's backtrack a bit. I'll provide you with a bit of history. It started off as the communications branch of the Dene Nation way back in 1971, when, after the white paper came out in 1969, that was when the government of the Liberal government under Pierre Trudeau wanted to eliminate the Indian Act, and he wanted to essentially assimilate Indigenous people into the mainstream of Canada. The Indigenous people here in the Northwest Territories got together and they decided to create the Dene Nation. And at that time, it was called the Indian Brotherhood of the Northwest Territories. At that time, they created a communications branch and they called it the Native Press. And they published the first monthly and then weekly newspaper, or bi-weekly newspaper, I should say. And it ran like that for several years. Quite a number of years, actually. And it gained a really good reputation for photography and insightful journalism. And it won several major awards with the Alberta Newspaper Association, as well as the other associations. It submitted awards, it submitted articles and newspapers, or rather photos to. And then in 1990, the Conservative government under Brian Mulroney slashed programs that funded Indigenous newspapers across Canada. Newspapers had their budgets cut immediately, 75%. Native radio stations and TV operations, albeit small TV operations, had their budgets slashed 25%. And so that was immediate. And so the Native Press at that time had to review its mandate. It had to review how it wanted to best serve its audience, which was the Northwest Territories. And what they did at that time, they decided to go after more mainstream advertising. And then they changed the name from the Native Press to the Press Independent. And they survived for another 2 years before finally the operation ceased. So there were like two or three attempts since those years, since 1993, where people have tried to publish the native press, but they were not successful. And a few years ago, we discovered that the name Native Press had actually been secured by an individual in 1993 after the budget cuts and after the newspaper ceased operation. And he was kind of unwilling to let it go because he said it had historical value. It should stay in the North, and I agreed with him. Yeah, it should stay in the North. But it should be Indigenous owned. So we negotiated a deal, and I secured the name 5 years ago. And my son, Zachary, encouraged me to relaunch the Native Press. We were at the Shoppers Drug Mart getting a prescription filled, and I went to see what he was up to, and he was standing in front of the magazine stand, and he was looking at them, and I was curious about what he was looking at, and I said, what are you doing? He said, what do you see when you look at the magazines? And I said, I see all kinds of magazines. I see magazines about fitness, I see humor magazines, and I let him know what I was looking at. He said, you know what I see? And I said, what? He said, I don't see us. In other words, he didn't see a representation of Indigenous people on that entire news rack of about 40 or 50 or 60 magazines. He didn't see one representation of Indigenous people. So that's when he encouraged me to relaunch the Native Press. So we secured the name, we set up the business plan, and in January 2017, we printed off our first run of 1,000 newspapers. We had 4 or 5 runs after that, and then we went to a predominantly online model where we just repost news and submit our own entries, because the print model wasn't working and it wasn't very cost beneficial. So hence we are still online. We still exist as a business entity, but we are predominantly online, and people can find us on Facebook, and we repost articles and we repost opinions, and we're still busy. We still dabble in the news. And last year, rather I should say in December of last year, we launched a radio station, nativepressradio.com. And we've gained a bit of a following since then. So yeah, we're still present and we are still active, and we still repost the news that's of interest and beneficial to our audience.
No, I'm really curious about this nativepressradio.com as well, because this is, of course, right up our alley. It's like, wow. I'm glad. I'm also glad to see that, and I'm hoping, maybe I'm assuming here, but I'm hoping that it's this Native Press is actually very well received in your area.
Well, we've been fairly. Yeah, we have been fairly well received. People still recognize that, it's still around.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I said right from the beginning, when Zachary and I formed a partnership to reestablish the Native Press, is that A, it can never have government funding. B, it can never have a bank loan. And C, it can never have organizational funding, which means it must be privately owned. That way, it is beyond the purview of anybody who sort of looks at us and says, I don't like that editorial you wrote, or I don't like that article you submitted, or, I don't like the way you're doing this, so I'm going to cut your funding. We want to avoid 1990 altogether. So, and the other thing I told Zachary is that the name Native Press must be Indigenous owned, and it must stay in the North. So with those 3 conditions, we launched the Native Press, and we've been true to ourselves, at least, about the future of the Native Press.
You guys might be one of the last bastions of true journalism without having to answer to pretty much anybody out there ever. I mean, really, this kind of unchains you guys to actually do and print about anything that's really worth printing instead of having to answer to, like you said, the money.
Yeah, well, it's an expensive venture to own a traditional newspaper these days because the costs are just so overwhelming. We've just, for instance, to run 1,000 newspapers here in the Northwest Territories costs $1,700, and so to cover that cost, you have to run a full page ad of about $200 or $2,000 rather. And a lot of businesses aren't willing to ante up for that. So then you're having to nickel and dime down to like the quarter page or the eighth page or even 1/16th page. You're having to nickel and dime, and people, generally speaking, aren't when they look at social media and they say, well, I can get my message out for nothing, and why should I pay $2,000 to get a full page ad out? So, that's the economics of it all. And we found that really oppressive. And we went through a lot of money in those early days to try and get the native press out. And we still have publications from those days sitting here because we couldn't find people to distribute it, because they were sort of saying, well, we have Facebook, we have all these different social medias, Instagram, Twitter, and we can get the same message out using those as opposed to publishing in your newspaper. So here we are, having to rely on this model. And so we recognize that Facebook is a huge enterprise. It's a huge entity that serves everybody, not just the Indigenous people. But we decided to, launch our own social media. We've recently launched ourbook.ca. And so we're hoping that will sort of help fill in the void where people are getting frustrated and tired of Facebook. So, yeah, we're having to evolve. We're having to change.
Do you feel that sometimes I watch other publications, more independent publications, that only appeal to a segment of the population? For example, you'll have like what they call the paprika here, and which appeals to the Indo-Canadian population. They talk about Indo-Canadian businesses. It almost feels xenophobic. Is that something that you're bumping into as well with the native press? Is there really like an isolation of First Nations or in the Northwest Territories, or is it something that's opening and appealing to more than just the First Nation demographic?
Well, I think we have to recognize that we truly live in a global environment. And for Indigenous people, we have to get the message out, not just to our neighbors here in the Northwest Territories, but also to the rest of Canada and to the globe. And we have to use the tools that are available to be able to do that, to use the social media, and to use the broadcast mechanisms that are available. For instance, I set up a native press radio on essentially a dime, practically, when you consider all the possible expenses. And we're in the process of looking at possibly setting up an internet TV network as well. So, I mean, the possibilities for communication are just so phenomenal. And as my old history teacher would say, it's mind-boggling what's possible.
I'm glad to hear that. Now let's go dig in it a bit deeper, because here on the left of the valley, we've held on to that story about the horrors of the residential schools in Canada, and it's a story we don't want to let go. We don't want this story to die, because I think it's an incredibly important story, and it needs to be told and retold until this is completely healed. What do you guys feel? How do you guys feel about this entire story at the native press there? How are you guys tackling that?
Well, let's put it this way. It's going to be several generations before anybody can even consider themselves healed from all of this. Because when you examine the history of Canada, essentially, it's not just the history of Canada, but the history of colonization. Essentially, this is the residential school, the 60s scoop, the day school settlements, everything, the reservations, the reserves that were in Canada. It was all kitten part to the initial question that quote-unquote explorers asked themselves, how do we solve the Indian problem? I mean, they arrived on our shores and they saw all these pesky little individuals running about, and they said, well, we want this land, we want the resource, and we want everything that they have for ourselves. But how do we get rid of them? So, aside from just outright genocide, which is what Christopher Columbus practiced, because his explorers and the ones that soon followed just practiced arbitrarily, just outright extermination. And there are countless tales of that. I recall reading one account of a sailor who was on I think he was on the second or third Christopher Columbus voyage to the islands, and he described his shame in having to help his bosses convert the native people. And the way they did that was they took the chief or the headsman or the appropriate leader, and they grabbed his arm and they asked him in Spanish, do you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? And of course, the leader didn't understand what was being said, and he shook his head, and they chopped his hand off. So then they take the other hand, and they say, do you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? And of course, he looks at his one hand, it's gone, and he looks at his other hand, it's still there, and of course, he nods his head. And they did that as a practice for most of the people that they contacted to convert them into the mercy of the Christian faith. And so, what the author of the article said was, I am so ashamed to be, a Christian. I'm so ashamed to be Spanish. I'm so ashamed to be among the group that landed here. But there's nothing I can do about it. Now, I tell that just as a precursor to some of the other practices that were administered to other explorers or other rangers, as some would say, into the heartland of Turtle Island, because that's predominantly how Indigenous people were treated. They were treated as savages. They were treated as uneducated. They were treated as unsophisticated. And they were treated as not worthy of being the caretakers or the landowners. Well, we didn't really think we owned the land. We just occupied it. We just used it for whatever resources they could supply us. But there was a thinking within the colonists, that because the Lord gave us dominion over the world back in Genesis, we have a right and we have a responsibility to show others how to properly use those resources and how to properly, attain the benefits and riches that God promised us back in Genesis. And here are these savages on the land. They're just running around, just fulfilling their lives, but they're not using the land. They're not doing anything with it. They're just, using the surface, where we could use it to our benefit so much better than they can. So that was the thinking. How do we solve the Indian problem? And so what do? They put us on reserves, first of all. Then they put us in residential schools, and they try and educate us in the ways of modern society. And, some of the stories that are coming out of residential schools still are horrifying. And they're akin to some of the stories that were told about the Jewish Holocaust in World War II.
Yes.
The abuses, not just the physical abuse and the sexual abuse, but also the psychological abuse and the emotional abuse. And when you're told that you're not worth anything, and when you're told that you're a sinner and you're dirty and you're just a horrible human being, eventually that wears you down. And that's how they tried to solve it, by beating the Indianness out of us. So, and plus the other thing too is when they enacted the Indian Act, they enforced all kinds of conditions upon us. They didn't let us go to university for it. They said that's a crime, punishable. You couldn't go to a public school. They had to go to the residential school. If a parent let their child go to a residential or let their child go to a public school, they could be imprisoned. They could be fined. So there was no mercy, essentially. And you couldn't become a doctor. You couldn't become a lawyer. You couldn't become an engineer. You couldn't gather to discuss your political rights or discuss the possibility of, growing out of this horrible situation. You couldn't have your potlatches and your drum dances and your powwows. You couldn't hold them. And they were your connection to the Creator. They were your connection to the land. They were your connection to the Spirit. So with all of that against you, is it any wonder that a lot of people turn to alcohol and turn to substances and turn to other ways of being able to express themselves? And if you decided, for instance, if you decided to join the military and then come back to your land, you were stripped of all your indigenous rights. So I don't know. I mean, you look at the residential school and you sort of scratch your head and you say, geez, and how did we ever make it? Because is it just a numbers question? I mean, is it the fact that we sent 1,000 kids to a school and only 10 came back and, they're doing okay? Is it a numbers game? I don't know. But I look at those grave sites, and a lot of those situations, the churches that ran those schools wanted to cover it up. They wanted this, and I suspect that there was a lot of alteration in the figures. They might have turned around and initially said, well, we've received 930 kids, but hey, 52 died, but let's just only say 10 died.
Mm.
And of course, they just bury them in these plots that are around the school or whatever. We'll never know who those kids are. That's the sad part.
No, that is. It's beyond sad.
We might be able to create a connection through possible DNA examination, although I suspect that some of the DNA is deteriorated. But we'll never know who exactly those kids are. But they are just a representation of everything that went horribly, horribly wrong for us.
Whenever we talk about the residential school issue, there's always a segment of the population, usually on the conservative side of the alley, that basically minimizes the thing. I mean, when you look at residential schools, on paper, let's say you're a complete stranger, you come into the history of residential schools. The idea of integrating the First Nation population into the European mindset, because of course at the time they saw it as superior, almost makes sense. And today the conservative will basically say, yeah, we kind of fucked up, but our intentions were good. How do First Nations see that? Do they see it as, from the get-go, it was perpetrated to really eliminate us as a people? Or was there an actual attempt, there was an actual attempt to integrate First Nations into the European mindset?
Well, what does that integration mean? I mean, it means getting rid of your culture. It means getting rid of your language. It means getting rid of any connection you have to the past. That's what the integration means. It means getting rid of the Indian, and that's what they wanted. They didn't want those connections to the past. They didn't want the people coming out of residential schools to still say it, to be able to say, I'm still Anishinaabe, I'm still Cree, I'm still Dene. They didn't want that. They wanted people to come out of those residential schools saying, I am a Canadian. Mm-hmm. And that was it. I mean, there would have been no hyphenation in there, that like a Native American or Chinese American or Chinese Canadian. There would have been no hyphenation. They wanted people coming out of those residential schools saying, I am a Canadian and I will follow all the rules that Canada sets down before me. And so I will be a good little Indian, or I'll be a good little Canadian. So that's what they wanted. And so if I were to set up a school right now and say to your children, you're going to come in here and you're going to do exactly what you're told, regardless of what, and you're going to put up with whatever shit that I put you through, and you're going to leave here a nice, good little person because, and you're going to follow all my rules in life. Regardless of what I did to your kids, how would you feel? Would you feel offended? Would you feel hurt? Would you feel angry? So It's the same thing. I come into your house and I tell you, you can only go into the bedroom and you have to stay there. And you need my permission to leave that bedroom. Okay? Now I now own all the rest of your house. But you have to stay in your bedroom, even though you've been there for 20 or 30 or 40 years or however long you've been there. You have to stay in your bedroom. And, there can only be 2 people in there. And if you have a baby, you have to have my permission to have the baby. And they can't learn anything. And, and we will call you whatever we want. And, by the way, you can't go to the bathroom until we tell you to go to the bathroom. If I were to go to your house and impose all those rules, what would you feel?
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. It'd be outrage and
I think that's what Canada has to understand. I think that's what we have to. The message still has to come out that these are the conditions that were imposed on us, and yes, we're survived, but we're still angry about it. We're still hurt. We're still upset. We're still annoyed.
Do First Nation people feel that the church has a? I mean, it seems to me that I hate to say this, but it almost seems like the church is almost getting away with it. I mean, right now people are angry at the government. They're looking to the government to do things, but we're not demanding a lot of accountability from the churches. Even the Catholic Church, especially, has not even apologized at this point. You feel it would have been different for residential school survivors if the government itself had run those schools instead of the churches? Or do you think the result would have been the same?
I think the results would have been the same because, again, I say it's because it was all an answer to that question. How do we solve the Indian problem? I mean, and I've said this for many years that there's going to be a government at some point in the future that's going to say to Native people, that's it. There's going to be no more. We've given you your reserves. We've given you your rights. We've given you compensation. We've apologized. We've done all of this for you. And now you are a minority like everybody else. And it's going to come to that point. It's probably in the next 2 or 3 generations. But there will be a government that will say that to us. And when they do, there will be weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth, and we will be reduced to a minority. And of course, as everybody has told me so far, that minority rights are not recognized as strongly as Indigenous rights are.
Yeah,
everything has been done in steps towards that. You had the Indian Act. You had the we didn't get the right to vote until 1960, and all of a sudden we got that in 1960 after much campaigning. We weren't recognized as people until 1960, essentially, as persons. And, the Trudeau tried the white paper, and Harper apologized for the residential schools. We've had the day school settlement. We've had the 60 scoop settlement. And everything has been step by step by step until we get to that point where the government says, we've done everything we can for you.
So, there's no easy answer to that question, but what would make this right?
Which make it right?
Well, what would it make it right for? What would the Canadian government, Caucasians, the people as a whole, have to do to make it right, and for reconciliation for our two people, I guess, to merge as one at this point?
Okay. Ante up to the table. Not just tell us, oh, I'm sorry, but ante up to the table. We have reserves that are still boiled water advisories. There's 600 reserves, and probably about 10% of them, or 15% even, are on boiled water advisories, which means they can't even go to the lake or a river nearby and get a pail of water to drink it without worrying about their safety. Help us solve that problem. We have houses that are trying to accommodate 20 people on our reserves. Help us solve that problem. We have education opportunities that are slipping by us because the opportunities are too expensive for us to send for kids from our reserve to the universities and colleges. So help us solve that problem. Give us the tools, as they say, and we will do the job. But Canada is not giving us the tools. And when we see a Liberal government ante up to the table with 3 Syrian refugees who were tortured in a Syrian prison, and they see somebody like Omar Khadr, who is subjected to all sorts of situations in Guantanamo Bay for crimes he had allegedly committed during the Afghan war. You know, and they ante up to the table and they give them each $10 million. And so Native Canadians, we have to justify ourselves all the time. So why should we have to justify ourselves all the time and have to beg and, you know, for $10,000 for a day school settlement, or basically justify every single thing we did and do because of the situations that were caused upon us? So why should we have to justify ourselves? If you're willing to ante up to Omar Khadr for $10.5 million, why can't you give each residential school survivor at least $250,000? And since we're not worrying about cost right now, and since we're throwing open the treasury, why not just say to Indigenous people, well, look, we're going to do everything we can. We don't care what the cost is, but we're going to justify everything to you. So we're going to say, okay, you went to residential school for 10 years, we're going to give you $1 million. There you go. There's all your suffering. There's all your pain. Now, we're going to send your kids to university. We're going to send your kids to college free, regardless. No discussion about cost or anything. We're going to build houses on your reserves and your remote communities. We're going to help ease your health issues. We're going to provide programs for you to help your population. We're going to... Canada has to own the responsibility and ante up to the table and say, here we go. This will help everything, and let's move on from this.
Yeah, I sure hope this day happens and happens soon. Do you feel there was somebody that mentioned the residential school, discovering Kamloops was a bit Canada's George Floyd moment. Do you feel that the wind is changing in that sense?
A little bit, but not a lot. Like, I'm not. I think a lot of people are just hoping that the incidents like George Floyd will just kind of slip under the carpet at some point. I think they're just kind of hoping it'll go away. But you know, as long as we keep the memories alive, we have to keep reminding society that you know, there still exists systemic racism. There still exists. You know, even within the police force, an element that still believes that they're far superior to anybody, not just Native, but of color. You know, and they can still enforce rules as they see fit. And in a lot of those cases, those applications of rules come with force, sometimes unnecessary force.
Roy, you were a survivor of the 60s scoop. I don't want to get into somewhere too personal if you don't want to talk about it, but is it possible for you to describe to us, because a lot of our audience is also in the States, and they don't necessarily understand the residential school issue, although they had their version in the U.S. They had the Indian boarding schools, and eventually this story will happen in the U.S. as well. So can you survived the 60s scoop. Is it possible for you to describe to us I wasn't born at the time, so what was that like?
Well, okay, just to backtrack a bit, I was born in Red Lake, Ontario, and for the first 3.5 years of my life, I was with my family, and I was learning Ojibwe, and we split a lot of time between Red Lake, Pikangikum, and the trap line. And at some point in 1963, social services deemed my mother not a fit mother. And so my brother recounted this story to me. What he told me was that they showed up one day, they explained the situation to my mother, and they, along with a police officer, took me and a younger sibling with them. Now, my younger sibling was probably only about 2 at the time, so they put her in a foster care situation, and they sent me along down with my older brother down to St. Margaret's down in Fort Francis residential school. At Fort Francis, apparently, they quote unquote processed me. They discovered I was only 3.5, and so then they said, well, no, he can't stay here. What we'll do is we'll put him into foster care. So a little while later, and my brother figures it was about a week, maybe 2 weeks after I arrived there, I was sent to Kenora, Ontario, where I was put into the foster care system, and then later shipped back to Red Lake to be put into a children's home run by the Mennonite Church. So I spent about a year, maybe a year and a bit before I was put into a foster care home, and then I spent time in another foster care home before the Dahls finally came to the children's home and picked me out as to adopt, essentially. And so in April of 1965, I was adopted by the Dahl family. Now, being adopted into a white home is kind of like a double-edged sword. You enjoy the benefits of the good home and the clean clothes and the vacations and the you go out in the land when you want, and all of that. And of course, the other side of that sword is that there's a huge disconnect with your own people, and a huge disconnect with the audience that you're trying to become involved with, aka the white people. So in school, I was teased by the white kids for being a jigaboo, and as one kid put it, "You're just a brown nigger. You're just dumb and you're just as dumb and stupid as a noodle, except you're brown."
Wow.
And of course, the native kids didn't include me in their activities either, because I was living in a white home, and they called me an apple and a potato. So I mean, I was kind of lost between two worlds, and I discovered later in years that a lot of 60 Scoop survivors are the same way. We were lost, and we're still kind of lost because we're still not quite welcome in either world. But I remember I was crying one day, and I went home and I cried after some vicious teasing from some of the white kids. And my mom sat me down, my stepmom sat me down, and she said, "Roy, because of your situation, because you're here with us, you will never be accepted into either circle. You'll never be accepted into the white circle. You'll never be accepted into the native circle." She said, "And you have to get used to that." But she said, "The thing is, they may not like you. At least they should respect you. So whatever you do in life, go out and make sure that you become very, very good at it, so that they can at least respect you. Be excellent at what you do." And that's when she first taught me the idea that excellence is the antidote to racism. That they may not like you because of the color of your skin, or because of your language, or because of your culture, or whatever else, but at the very least, they should respect you for you being excellent at what you do.
I think that's very nice.
So after that, I just started focusing on my own thing, and I just started doing the stuff that interested me. I mean, I was very athletic back then. I used to cycle like 50 miles on a Saturday and a Sunday, and run like 3 or 4 miles at a time. I used to play a lot of hockey, and I was involved in a lot of high school activities. So I mean, I learned how to focus on the good in life, as opposed to focusing on all the negatives.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's very wise advice, first of all, and I think she's absolutely correct. Excellence in any situation or any field commands respect right off the bat. So I think that was very wise advice.
Yeah, Kevin, can you ask him for me? What the apple thing? Is that I've
the apple or the potato?
Yeah, so is that what 'cause I've heard the
Brent
Twinkie. Yeah, I'm sorry. But like have you heard like Asian people say the Twinkie thing where it's like they're yellow on the outside, white on the inside?
Yes, I know. I'm trying to translate here. Brent wanted some clarification on the apple and the potato thing because there's something similar down south in the U.S. For the Asian populations about a Twinkie or something like that. So can you clarify that kind of insult, what that meant?
Yeah, I get called that all the time. White on the inside, brown on the outside.
Oh.
Or an apple, white on the inside and red on the outside. It just refers to having, I guess, the values of the society as opposed to the values of what people believe to be your culture. So,
okay, that makes more sense now.
That's interesting.
The values and the, I guess, the sense is how I would put it.
Okay, that makes more sense.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
Roy, when you're looking at younger generations of First Nations, and they're learning this history, they've kind of had to live with the ramifications of not being involved themselves, but they've kind of had the ripple effect of the residential schools. How are the new generations of First Nations taking this?
I think a lot of them are hurt. I think a lot of them are still angry that their parents and their grandparents went through that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also that there's a sense of understanding when they look at their parents and grandparents and they see how they struggle with their experiences through alcohol and through drugs, and they sort of there's a bit of they're asking themselves, okay, if I had gone through that, how would I be dealing with that now? So I think there's a lot of that going on. But slowly, I think they're understanding that, this must never happen again, and it will not ever happen again to us or our children or our grandchildren.
Fantastic. Roy, if you had a magic wand in your hand right now and you can magic something into reality and to solve this situation, what do you think would need to happen? Whether on the Canadian government side or you said come to the table, but what do you think would need to settle this once and for all, so this can just be put in the past and never again this kind of situation happen?
I don't know. Like I said, I think Canada has to ante up to the table, not just apologize.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have to start committing resources to it all. And I think there have to be more situations where people understand what we went through. I participated in several blanket exercises, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the blanket exercises, but what it's intended to do is to introduce an audience to essentially what we went through as Indigenous people, from contact to where we are at the end. And part of the blanket exercise is there's a series of blankets set on a big floor, and as different historical events are introduced into the exercise, a lot of parts of the blankets are taken away, so that by the end of the exercise, let's say there's an audience of 30 people, only about 7 or 8 are standing on small little pieces of the blanket. And a lot of people have told me after their experience in the blanket exercise, and some have told me that in tears, that they never understood what we went through as Indigenous people. They never knew the history. They never knew the history of contact and what the different leaders were trying to impose, because John A. McDonald wanted us to get out of the way, essentially, of Western expansion. So how did he do that? He got rid of the buffalo. He got rid of our dependence on the land. He put us on reserves. He sent us to residential school. And that's his history, because he wanted Western expansion. He wanted, he had a vision of Canada, but it didn't include us. Mm-hmm. And that's what we want. We want inclusion. We want to be able to say, we are part of, this great nation of Canada, but we want to do it on our own terms. We want to be able to say, this is us. This is who we are. This is who we were, and let's move forward together. That's what we want. We want inclusion, but we want to do it on our own terms.
And I think that's a fantastic way to end that. Thank you so much, Roy. Thank you so much for being on the show. Really, really appreciate that. If people want to find out more about you and what you're doing with Native Press, where can they find you?
Well, they can email me at rdahl.yk@gmail.com.
Perfect. And if they want to find out more about the Native Press?
nativepress17@gmail.com.
Awesome. Roy, make sure to send that to me. I will put that in the notes of the show. Roy, thank you so much for being on the show, man. I really, really appreciate that. But before I let you go, I got to have you say, hi, this is Roy Dahl of Native Press, and I took a left at the valley.
Sorry, you want me to say what?
Hi, this is Roy Dahl of the Native Press, and I took a left at the valley.
Hi, this is Roy Dahl of the Native Press, and I took a left at the valley.
Fantastic. Perfect. And that was Roy Dahl of the Native Press. Great guy. My God. Such a wealth of information for that guy.
Oh, yeah. He was fun.
I'm really glad he came on the show because I really wanted to talk about that story that we've been following for quite some time now about the residential school issue in Canada. And maybe to stand a bit as a warning because that story will develop and down the road will make its way down to the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
The U.S. has their own version of it. And it's just hasn't made the front page.
I mean, depending upon how the leadership goes, I think in this country, because we're pretty good at suppressing stuff or getting people to go, hey, look over here. No, look at that. Look over here.
You know what? As a species, as a species of primates, we are progressive. I mean, I'm pretty sure during the days of slavery, nobody ever saw an end to it either, right? And, even after, Jim Crow, nobody saw an end to it. But it is getting better, slower than we'd like it to happen, but it is getting better. We're not falling behind. It's not like if we take slavery again as an example, there was somebody, I think it was comedian Kevin Hart, that basically said racism today is worse than ever. Excuse me? Racism is still here. It's absolutely, but you can't tell me that racism is worse now than it was during slavery. Right?
It's different.
You can't say that.
It's not. Yeah, it's definitely not worse than ever. I mean,
it's still here. It's still a problem, absolutely. But you can't say it's worse. It is slowly but surely getting better.
Maybe it's how it feels. Like it feels like it's worse because you should be better. I don't know how that works.
I also think that part of it is the question of because the media is all over the place now, so it seems that we're always bombarded with it, right?
Right.
Yeah. Same thing that what was it? Steven Pinker and the Better Angels of Our Nature didn't send his book. It seems like everything's getting worse in the world, but actually, if you look at the numbers, it's not.
No, we're actually much better than we ever have been, ever.
Yes,
but in regard to social progress.
So thank you so much, guys, for being on the show, and thank you to my co-host and Thomas that we lost halfway through. Sorry, Thomas.
sorry, Thomas.
His internet just dropped. Thank you, my co-host Bradley and Sabrina as well, and thank you for listening. And thank you to our guest Roy Dahl of the Native Press. If you want to find out more about us, you can follow us on the Left of the Valley. You can send us an email, leftatvalley@outlook.com. You can follow us at leftatvalley.ca. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, at LATV Podcast. Give us a 5-star review wherever you find us. It helps us and helps others find the show.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, exactly. And you can help us support our efforts by becoming a patron at patreon.com/LATV, where you get a completely unedited, unscripted, not touch version of the show and lots of behind the scenes stuff as well. And I'm working on getting T-shirts for people as well for our patrons.
Nice. Oh, that's fucking awesome. Of course. Oh, yeah.
I'm working on it. Quick plug on Unapologetics.
Unapologetics panel stream. Please watch every Wednesday night at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. Check it out. It's a lot of fun. We just watch clips and have fun and talk. It's great. Check it out. Perfect. Like and subscribe. Smash that like button.
Coming up, we'll have the deconversion of Nathan Brown next week. After that, beginning of September, we'll have Steve Grumbine talking about modern monetary theory. We'll also have Dr. Todd Frank Miller talking about critical thinking. We'll have Mary B. LaPage talking about religious trauma. And somewhere in October, we'll have Candace Gorman to talk about death and disbelief.
Oh,
so good stuff coming down the pipe.
Fun. Yeah.
Anything else we need to add?
I think that's it.
All right, my friend. You have yourself a great week. Until next time.
Proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance, and you just call it faith. And unsubstantiated claims, that's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
You're listening to Left at the Valley 2.0.